So Canelo pay-per-view numbers have not been released. Usually pay-per-view numbers come out the week after the fight, and it been 2 weeks, which could only mean one thing. Canelo pay-per-view numbers most likely flopped on DAZN versus Callum Smith. So what's your take on that? What do you think is the projection for these numbers? Because usually, like I said, the week after the fight, automatically, you saw Tyson, they released his numbers 1.5 million or 1.6 million. You saw Errol Spence, 250,000. The numbers probably won't be 100% accurate, but they will give you a projection. Why haven't they released Canelo versus Callum Smith fight yet? Because it was on pay-per-view. They distributed it on TV. It was on DAZN for $70. So why they haven't released the numbers if he's the biggest star and the face of boxing?
Because they know that Canelo is trash and he ain't got no Mexican blood. He still got white blood.
So,
and
what do you project the numbers to look like?
I would probably say, to be honest, looking at it from an economic point of view, he did less than at least 50,000 buys. I'm probably going to be honest with you.
Wow.
Like Canelo fighting, like, yeah, I would probably say if they haven't shown those numbers yet, those numbers had to have been horrible. At least 50 to at least maybe 80,000 buys. I cannot even see that even going past 100K, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I will have to disagree with you on that. I think he did possibly 200, 300K, but them still are low numbers for Canelo because, see, they compare him to like a Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. And Floyd Mayweather and Pacquiao, every time they fought on pay-per-view, they did 1 million plus. Like Floyd Mayweather versus Ortiz, he did 1.25 million on pay-per-view. That's how much he sold. Pacquiao versus, I mean, anybody really, he was doing close to 1 million or 1 million plus. So when they compare Canelo to them guys, they say he the face of the sport, so on and so forth. He ain't even doing 700,000 on pay-per-view. They claim he fought the #1 guy that's coming off a loss to Ryder, supposedly. You know, they claiming that he fighting the #1 guy in his division, Callum Smith. He don't fought the whole Smith family. But the number says otherwise. The number says he's not a big star. The number says the fans are not interested. The number says his fans, they do a lot of talking on social media, but they don't actually purchase his fights. Because like I said before, when you cherry pick so much, when you fight a guy that the whole world know Canelo is going to watch this fighter, like Callum Smith or even Avini, nobody is interested in that. Now, Canelo, he could do great numbers fighting a Charlo or an Andrade, a 50-50 fight, a Benavidez, a fight where you don't know who's going to win, at least not 100%. It's a 50-50 fight. It's a pick 'em fight, right? Now, them type of fights, Canelo most likely will do good numbers in, you know? But when you fight a Callum Smith of the world, that's why they got to hide his numbers, because he did poor numbers. So as far as I know, Canelo, he's no more of a bigger star than an Errol Spence, than a Tank Davis, because his numbers are so horrible that they haven't released them yet. I mean, I'm talking about to this day. I'm telling you, man, these Canelo numbers, they keep telling us he's the face of boxing. He's doing record-breaking numbers, but they never come out with him. Mind you, when it comes to pay-per-view numbers, this is like public knowledge, and at least reporters will get informed on these kind of statistics. But when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, if it shows that he's not doing good numbers, they're trying to hide it as much as possible. I got a super chat. Jones, salute to you, AKHi, in the chat. Nebraska in the building, Crawford country. Ryan by decision, but he's scared of Haney. Appreciate the love and support, though. But any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just want to say to hell with Canelo once again. You are not a true Latino fighter. You do not represent your heritage. And I really hope that somebody could just really take Canelo out like Charlo or Andrade, because Canelo, you do not represent boxing. Like, if I could find anybody else to replace you, I would probably go with Jamal Charlo or Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson or even Tank Davis, because Canelo is a laughingstock at this point.
Right. Well, let me ask you this question. As a fan, what does Canelo Alvarez have to do to earn your respect back? Because he clearly lost your respect fighting the Ivinis of the world, coming off losses while claiming he pound for pound number one. I mean, think about it. On the top 10 pound for pound list, I don't care who you got on the list. You cannot name me one fighter on the top 10 pound for pound list that's about to fight a fighter coming off a loss for a vacant strap instead of fighting the real champion. So what will it take for Canelo to do to earn your respect back?
He just needs to fight all of his contemporaries. Just fight Charlo, fight Andrade, fight every single damn fighter that has been calling your name out since day one, and you will have my respect. That's plain and simple. I don't care who you are or what you look like, but if you get into a sport like boxing, me as a fan, expect you to fight the best, not fight bums and trick the fans into believing that you are the greatest in the world when your resume doesn't speak otherwise. Either way, just shut up and please fight your contemporaries. And if you're not going to do that, get out of boxing, please.
Well, that's how you become a star in the sport of boxing. You got to fight your rivals. You got to fight the best in your division instead of being the pound for pound cherry picker in boxing. Because that's what Canelo turning out to become. He's the pound for pound number one cherry picker in the sport of boxing and the pound for pound number one against Europeans. If he want to do great numbers on pay-per-view, then fight the likes of Charlos of the world. Fight the likes of Andrade, the likes of Benavidez. I bet you every Hispanic will buy that fight. You know, if you want the Hispanic community to buy a pay-per-view, then fight Benavidez. If you want the whole United States and the world to buy your pay-per-view, then fight Charlo. Instead of cherry-picking a fighter coming off a loss. I mean, anybody would lose respect for Canelo then. And like I said, everything we say is a fact. We're not critiquing him by making up stuff. We critiquing him by bringing up facts. And the truth hurts at the end of the day. So that's why a lot of these decafs, they can't handle the truth. Furthermore, I just want to clarify that this episode you guys just watched was hosted on New Year's. However, shockingly enough, we are almost 2 months in since Canelo Alvarez fight with Callum Smith, and the pay-per-view numbers haven't came out till this day. I'll tell you one thing, old media is doing damage control to push their agenda. It's clear as day. I always tell you guys about the double standards in the sport of boxing. You see Canelo Alvarez cherry picking to the max while avoiding the best competition. Therefore, there is no doubt about it. There's fair criticism to be made toward Canelo, the way he's moving his boxing career. But old media would rather not do their own job, which is just report the facts, if it means to go against the code. So to the real boxing fans, if you may wonder why the best don't fight the best in the sport of boxing, you guys could thank old media, because they do damage control on a whole nother level. Forget about fair criticism. If it does not fit their agenda, they won't report on it. And I could prove it to you right now. Where is Canelo Alvarez pay-per-view numbers against Callum Smith? They say he the biggest star in the sport of boxing. However, we haven't seen his numbers since they made that claim. Where is Canelo Alvarez pay-per-view numbers? This is the $1 million question. Ever since he been on the zone, the only numbers they released was his highest numbers against Daniel Jacob, in which he managed to pull in 600,000 in the United States. So if that's Canelo Alvarez's highest numbers on the zone, them are poor numbers, since that fight in particular was not on pay-per-view. However, the Callum Smith fight was on pay-per-view, but the numbers have not been released to this day. For good reasons. Most likely the numbers are poor. That's why old media is doing damage control. As far as I know, you can't have it both ways. Old media can't claim Canelo is the face of boxing without providing receipts of Canelo Alvarez numbers that flopped on the zone. Keyword, flopped. That's the only explanation. Because if the numbers were any good, they will have reported them the next day, like they do with all of the fighters. You cannot be on Forbes list without being one of the highest paid, just like you can't be the face of boxing without doing the biggest numbers on pay-per-view or on TV. That's self-explanatory. But when it comes to these decafs and old media, what's understood does have to be explained to these decafs. And last but not least,
how did you choose Lomachenko? Because
I did not choose him. He requested, Canelo requested. So we sent out a vote and we analyzed his history.
Ooh, Canelo and Lomachenko requested?
Absolutely.
Ooh, you just made headlines.
Lomachenko,
You just made headlines.
Lomachenko, top rank, requested. And let me tell you, we analyzed the request. Top of the top.
Define the franchise belt. Can you define it?
The franchise is not a belt. It's not a championship. It's a designation given to elite, unique fighters who carry the industry of the sport of boxing. Canelo Alvarez and Lomachenko are two sensational fighters who carry the industry.
Ask Cameron Duncan, do Top Rank have like columns of fighters, and they say, we don't want this guy fighting the black fighter, we don't want this fighter fighting the Mexican fighter, and so on and so forth?
You're gonna get into the racial stuff, huh?
No, I'm not. I'm asking.
That's a theory there by the greatest matchmaker, probably, in my opinion, ever.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to mention his name either, but you know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
And he used to have a thing up on his board, NBF, no black fighters.
Uh-huh.
And when I was taught to bring up a fighter, you know, and again, it's just, he used to say to me, you can go anywhere in the country. And I'm going to leave it at this. I don't want to go into a long discussion because people are people in God's eyes, and we're all the same. He used to say to me, you can go anywhere into a city in America or anywhere in the world and ask a white guy, and he didn't say any other, he didn't say anything about Hispanic, anything. Ask a white guy to throw a jab, and half of them are going to turn backwards and throw it like a girl and everything. Ask any black man on a street corner in any city in the world, and they will snap out a jab in a heartbeat. And I used to laugh. He said, they're just more physically gifted. And he said, and so they have speed, and better to stay away from them. Nothing personal. So I said, okay. And I've lived by that. And, you know, I don't want to sound like some weird guy, but, you know, you're trying to be safe with your guys. And so, yeah, there is a thing about that, you know, but not in a bad way, in a very respectful way, you know, to be careful. So that's all.
The last man even said they doing that to protect them.
Right.
Somebody beat them, but they don't get a belt.
There you go.
The franchise belt is protect them from the big black guys.